For 7 lonely days, I sat beside my husband's hospital bed, waiting for our children to arrive. They never came. Room 312 next door overflowed with family, but our silence was only broken by the machines. I smiled, not from joy, but from a quiet certainty. They thought I was alone. They were wrong. Stay with me, like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. The hospital room had become my world, a stark, sterile bubble where time seemed both to crawl and to vanish without trace. For 7 days, room 314 had been my solitary post, a silent vigil beside Arthur. The air hung heavy with the scent of antiseptic, and the unspoken, my companion, a constant, unyielding presence, was the heart monitor beside Arthur's bed, its rhythmic beep-beep-beep, a monotonous declaration of life, a fragile testament to the will to survive. It was the only sound that broke the profound quiet. A stark reminder of the delicate balance between his fading breath and the mechanical assertion of his heart. I was 69 years old, and Arthur, my husband of 47 years, was 71. Our lives had been intertwined, a tapestry woven with shared dreams, struggles, and countless small joys. Now, the threads felt stretched thin, threatening to snap. I watched him, a man who had once been so vibrant, so full of life, lying still beneath a crisp white sheet, tubes and wires his new, unwelcome extensions. My eyes often drifted to the closed door of room 312, just across the hall. From behind it, I could hear the muffled sounds of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, the comforting murmur of families. They arrived in groups, their faces etched with worry, but also with mutual support. They brought flowers, comfort food, and the undeniable presence of love. Their lively energy spilled into the corridor, a stark contrast to the profound silence that reigned in our room. My heart ached. A deep, hollow pang, recognizing the irony of our situation. Other families gathered, but ours was conspicuously, painfully absent. Dr. Evans, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, entered on the morning of the 5th day. She moved with quiet grace, checking Arthur's vitals, adjusting his IV drip. Her presence was a small comfort. Her voice gentle as she spoke to him. Even though he couldn't respond, she turned to me, her gaze lingering. "Eleanor," she began, her voice soft. "You've been here day and night. Have your children been able to visit yet?" I straightened my shoulders, a familiar wave of defensiveness rising. "They're very busy, doctor. Michael has a demanding job. And Diana, well, she lives quite far. It's not easy for them to just drop everything." My words sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Doctor," Evans simply nodded, her expression unreadable, though her knowing glance spoke volumes. She'd seen it all before, the endless excuses, the thinly veiled truth. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a quiet understanding that deepened my shame. The truth was a bitter pill I swallowed daily. It was the crushing weight of their absence, far heavier than any physical burden. The moment Arthur had collapsed, the stroke swift and brutal, my first instinct had been to call our children. Michael, our eldest, answered on the 3rd ring. I could hear the distant clatter of what sounded like a restaurant. "Dad's had a stroke, Michael," I'd choked out, my voice trembling. "He's in the hospital. It's serious." There was a pause, a beat of silence that felt like an eternity. Then, his voice, smooth and annoyingly calm. "A stroke, Mom? Are you sure it's serious enough for me to drop everything? You know how important this merger is. He's a tough old bird. He'll pull through." He hadn't asked which hospital, or if he could speak to a doctor, just a dismissal. A casual waving away of his father's near-death experience. Diana, our daughter, had been even worse. I reached her voicemail, leaving a message that ended in a desperate plea. When she finally called back, nearly 12 hours later, her tone was laced with irritation. "Mom, a flight? To fly all the way there? Do you know how much that costs on such short notice? Besides, Dad's indestructible. He's probably already cracking jokes with the nurses. Just keep me updated, okay? I'm sure he'll pull through." She had sounded more concerned about her credit card bill than her father's life. Neither child had called back since. Not even a text. My phone, once a lifeline, now lay cold and silent on the bedside table, a mocking symbol of their indifference. I reached for Arthur's hand, holding it gently. It was cold, the skin papery and loose. But I remembered the strength that had once resided there. These hands had built our first home, had worked tirelessly in the garden, had held me close through every storm. These hands had lifted Michael and Diana onto their shoulders, had taught them to ride bikes, had comforted them through scraped knees and teenage heartbreaks. His calloused fingers, now still and unresponsive, had once been a source of such comfort, such protection. "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice raw with emotion. "I'm right here." The words hung in the quiet room, swallowed by the sterile air, witnessed only by the unwavering beep of the machines and the silent, watchful gaze of the fluorescent lights above. The empty chairs in the room felt like monuments to loneliness, stark reminders of the family that should have been here, that was not. A nurse had offered me a cot, suggested I get some proper rest. I had refused. How could I sleep, truly sleep, knowing that each breath Arthur took might be his last? I couldn't risk missing his final moments, couldn't bear the thought of him passing from this world without my hand in his, without my voice whispering reassurance. As the days blurred into one long, agonizing stretch, I found myself repeatedly asking the same question, a silent scream within my soul. How had we, Arthur and I, ended up so utterly alone? We had dedicated our lives to our children, poured every ounce of love, every sacrifice, every dream into raising them. We had given them everything we had, and yet, here we were, at the precipice of loss, with only the beeping machines for company. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor seemed to morph into a different sound, a distant echo from another time. My mind, weary from the endless vigil, drifted back 11 years, to a moment that felt like the true beginning of the end, the first tremor that shook the foundations of our family. Arthur had just turned 60, still full of vigor, his hands rough from years of honest work. He was a site supervisor, a man who built things, who saw blueprints transform into concrete realities. For 23 years, he'd worn his hard hat with pride, his reputation in the construction industry solid as the steel beams he oversaw. He loved his job, the camaraderie, the satisfaction of seeing a project completed, knowing he was an integral part of its success. Then came the economic crash. It hit like a sledgehammer. Overnight, projects froze, companies downsized, and the dreams of countless working men crumbled. Arthur, the proud site supervisor, found himself among the casualties, laid off. It wasn't just a job he lost. It was a part of his identity. He tried to remain stoic, to reassure me that something else would come along. But I saw the light dimming in his eyes. He sent out resumes, networked with old colleagues, attended job fairs where men half his age jostled for entry-level positions. Each rejection chipped away at his formidable confidence, leaving him a little more deflated, a little more withdrawn. He, who had always provided, suddenly felt adrift, cast aside. It was during this time that I noticed Michael begin to pull away. Our son, ambitious and sharp, had climbed the corporate ladder in the burgeoning tech world with remarkable speed. He spoke a different language now, one of venture capital and market shares, a world away from hard hats and blueprints. He was successful, undeniably so, and his father's unemployment seemed to become an embarrassment to him. The calls grew less frequent, the conversations more strained, always steering away from Arthur's fruitless job search. Michael, it seemed, could not reconcile his image of a successful father with the reality of an older man struggling to find work. I remember Thanksgiving dinner that year with a vivid clarity that still pricks at my memory. We were at our home, a tradition for decades, but the usual warmth felt diluted by an unspoken tension. Michael and his wife, Sarah, were there, along with Diana, who had flown in. The table was laden with food, but the atmosphere was thin, brittle. Arthur had, with a mix of desperation and a glimmer of hope, mentioned exploring some landscaping opportunities. A neighbor had suggested it, admiring his meticulous garden. It wasn't construction, but it was honest work. And it was outside. Michael, carving the turkey with practiced precision, paused. Knife in midair. He looked up, a faint smile playing on his lips, but his eyes held a calculating glint. "Landscaping, Dad?" he asked, his voice casual, yet carrying an unmistakable undertone of condescension. "Isn't that a bit of a step backward? I mean, from supervising multi-million-dollar projects to mowing lawns?" He chuckled, a small, dismissive sound, and Sarah, always quick to follow Michael's lead, echoed it with a delicate titter. I saw Arthur flinch. His face, usually ruddy and open, slowly flushed a deep, painful red. It wasn't anger that I saw, but profound shame, the kind that sinks into your bones and makes you want to disappear. He had been so proud of his work, so proud of being able to provide for us, and Michael's words had stripped him bare in front of his family. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Then Sarah, ever so helpful, chimed in, her voice dripping with an insincere sweetness. "Oh, Arthur, you know, some of those big box stores hire older gentlemen to greet people at the door. A Walmart greeter, they call them. It's not strenuous, and you get to socialize." She beamed, as if she had just offered him the solution to all his problems. The suggestion, intended perhaps as an attempt at levity, landed like a brick. It was an insult delivered with a smile, a cruel dismissal of all Arthur had ever been, all he had ever accomplished. Arthur didn't say another word through the rest of dinner. He picked at his food, his gaze fixed on his plate. As soon as the meal was over, he excused himself, claiming he needed to check on something in the garage. He disappeared, leaving me to navigate the awkward silence and Michael's oblivious chatter about his latest corporate triumph. Later, I found Arthur in the garage, hunched over his workbench, his head in his hands. He wasn't crying, but the silent slump of his shoulders spoke volumes of a spirit wounded. Perhaps irrevocably. He had always been so strong, so resilient. But that night, Michael and Sarah had found a chink in his armor and plunged the dagger deep. From that Thanksgiving onward, the distance between Michael and Arthur became a tangible thing. Michael's visits and calls, already infrequent, grew even more so. When he did call, the conversations were superficial, focused solely on his achievements, his travels, his promotions. He rarely asked about Arthur's day, never inquired about his job search. It was as if Arthur's unemployment had rendered him invisible, irrelevant in Michael's glittering world. Eventually, after nearly 2 years of relentless searching and dwindling hope, Arthur found a job. It wasn't the construction supervisor role he'd cherished. It was a lower-paying maintenance position for the local school district, repairing leaky faucets, changing light bulbs, patching holes in walls. It was honest work, and it restored a small measure of his dignity. He was working again, contributing, even if it wasn't what he'd envisioned for his retirement years. When I shared the news with Michael over the phone, his response was a perfunctory, "Oh, that's good, Mom. At least he's doing something." There was no genuine excitement, no acknowledgement of the perseverance it had taken, no pride in his father's resilience, just a hollow, dismissive sound that echoed the cracks already forming deep within our family's foundation. If Michael's reaction to Arthur's job loss had been disdain, Diana's was something colder, more cutting. Pure, unadulterated disappointment. Our daughter had always lived a charmed life, cushioned by the success of her husband, Kevin, in the booming real estate market. They had the sprawling house, the luxury cars, the exotic vacations. Diana was accustomed to a certain level of opulence, a lifestyle that seemed far removed from the humble realities of her parents' struggle. When Arthur lost his job, it wasn't just a blow to his pride. It was, in Diana's eyes, a blow to her own carefully constructed image of what her parents represented. She couldn't reconcile her prosperous life with the sudden, harsh truth of her parents' changed circumstances. Her visits, which had always been infrequent, became even more strained. She would scrutinize our home, the one Arthur had built with his own hands, brick by painstaking brick, the one that held 47 years of memories. It was a modest house, certainly, but it was filled with warmth and history. Yet, to Diana, it had suddenly become inadequate. I remember one afternoon, after a particularly pointed tour of our kitchen cabinets, she turned to me, a look of profound distaste on her face. "Mom," she began, her voice a mix of exasperation and pity. "You're living like poor people." The words hung in the air, sharp and unsparing. She wasn't asking, she was stating it as a fact. An undeniable truth, born of her own skewed perspective. The implication was clear. Our modest home, our careful budgeting, our choice to live within our means after Arthur's job loss. These were not noble sacrifices, but evidence of our failure, a blight on her otherwise perfect world. She even went so far as to suggest, with a detached air, that perhaps Arthur and I should consider selling the house, moving into something smaller, something that better reflected our new reality. The house Arthur had painstakingly constructed, the very embodiment of his pride and dedication, was now, to our daughter, a source of embarrassment. 2 years crawled by, years marked by Arthur's silent struggle to regain his footing, and by our quiet efforts to adjust to a simpler life. Then the phone rang. It was Diana. Her voice, usually so composed, was laced with an unfamiliar tremor. Kevin's real estate business had hit a snag, she explained. A series of bad investments, unexpected market shifts. They were in trouble. She needed $5,000, urgently, to cover some medical bills and to stave off a mortgage payment default. My heart sank. We weren't flush with cash. Arthur's new maintenance job, while providing a steady income, barely covered our expenses, and our savings had dwindled significantly after his long period of unemployment. Yet, I looked at Arthur, and without a moment's hesitation, he made the decision. He cashed in a portion of his small, carefully guarded retirement fund. The money, meant to secure our own future, our dwindling security net, was transferred to Diana's account within days. He did it without a word of complaint, without a hint of reluctance. His love for his daughter, even in the face of her previous disdain, was boundless. Diana's gratitude was fleeting. A quick, "Thanks. Mom, Dad, you saved us." But that was it. The money was never repaid. The sacrifice was never acknowledged again. Months later, a new set of pictures appeared on social media. Diana and Kevin, radiant and smiling, lounging on a pristine beach in Hawaii. "A belated honeymoon," the caption read. My gaze drifted to Arthur's face as he scrolled through the images on my tablet. His eyes, usually so resilient, held a flicker of something profoundly wounded, a silent ache that spoke volumes. He didn't say anything, but I saw the hurt, the stark realization of how easily his sacrifice had been forgotten, how quickly his children had moved on to enjoy the fruits of his diminishing security. From that point on, the chasm between us and our children grew wider, deeper. It wasn't just a distance of miles. It was an emotional canyon, a gulf of misunderstanding and unacknowledged pain. Arthur, in his quiet way, began to blame himself. I'd overhear him muttering, "I failed them." Or, "If I'd just kept my job." It broke my heart to hear him, a man of such integrity and strength, internalize their disappointments as his own failings. He carried the weight of their expectations, their perceived judgments, believing he hadn't provided enough, hadn't been enough. I realized, with a heavy heart, that Arthur had spent the last 11 years of his life, from the moment he lost his job to this very day, trying to win back their respect. He sought their approval, their acknowledgement, their love, almost as if he felt he had to earn it anew. He, who had spent a lifetime building solid structures, both literally in houses and metaphorically in our family, now faced his own crumbling foundation. And he faced it alone. Except for me. I tightened my grip on his cold hand, my fingers brushing against the familiar gold band of his wedding ring. It was a tangible link to our shared past, a symbol of the vows we had made, the life we had built. "I'm still here, Arthur," I whispered, the words a silent promise, a fierce vow against the encroaching loneliness. "I'll always be here." My voice, though soft, held the resolve of a woman who had witnessed too much, endured too much, and was determined to stand as the last bastion against the tide of indifference. Arthur's passing came quietly, a gentle ebb tide stealing him away in the early hours of a Tuesday morning. I had finally succumbed to exhaustion, my head resting on the edge of his bed, my hand still clasped around his. The rhythmic beep-beep-beep of the heart monitor, my constant companion for the past 7 days, simply stopped. There was no dramatic flatline, no frantic alarms, just a profound, unsettling silence that woke me with a jolt. My eyes fluttered open to the sight of a nurse already there, her face etched with a familiar sadness. Dr. Evans, who seemed to materialize out of the hushed corridor, confirmed what my heart already knew. Arthur was gone. They spoke softly, offering their condolences, their voices a gentle hum in the sudden stillness of the room. I barely registered their words, my gaze fixed on Arthur's face. He looked peaceful, truly at rest for the first time in years. The lines of worry that had etched themselves around his eyes and mouth seemed to have softened, erased by the quiet dignity of death. He looked younger, almost like the Arthur I had first fallen in love with, before the weight of life and disappointment had begun to bear down on him. I sat there for a long time, holding his now truly cold hand, unwilling to let go. This was it. The end of our story. Or at least, this chapter of it. The silence in the room was no longer unsettling. It was sacred. A final communion. As the nurses began their quiet, respectful preparations, Dr. Evans returned, holding a simple manila envelope. Her expression was solemn, yet held a hint of something more. A secret entrusted. "Eleanor," she said, her voice soft. "Arthur made me promise to give you this," he said. "After everything is finished, you'd know what to do." Her eyes met mine, a shared understanding passing between us. Arthur, ever the planner, ever thoughtful. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly as I took the envelope. It felt surprisingly substantial. Inside, I could feel the distinct shape of a small, metallic object and the rustle of papers. A wave of anticipation, mixed with a fresh pang of grief, washed over me. What could it be? What final message had he left for me? The drive home was a blur. The world outside the car window seemed surreal. Too bright, too loud, too intensely alive. Cars honked, people laughed, children played. A stark contrast to the quiet, dignified ending I had just witnessed. The hospital, with its hushed corridors and sterile air, felt like a distant dream. Now, I was back in the familiar landscape of our town, but everything felt profoundly altered, viewed through the distorting lens of my grief. I pulled into our driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel, a sound Arthur had always disliked. The house stood silent, waiting. I couldn't bring myself to go inside just yet. Instead, I sat in the driver's seat, the engine still running, the envelope clutched in my hand. With a deep, shuddering breath, I finally opened it. Inside, nestled amongst several folded sheets of paper, was a small, ornate brass key. It felt cool and heavy in my palm, intricately designed. Unlike any key I regularly used, my fingers brushed against the papers, and I carefully unfolded them. Arthur's familiar handwriting, slightly faded over the years, filled the pages. My eyes immediately recognized the distinctive loops and flourishes of his script, a handwriting that always seemed to reflect his steadfast nature. "My dearest Eleanor," the letter began, and his voice, so clear in my memory, filled my mind, as if he were sitting beside me, whispering the words, "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you in body. I am so sorry to leave you alone, my love. And I am sorry for the absence of our children during these last days. It pains me more than you know, but I refuse to let it define the beautiful life we built together." A tear traced a path down my cheek, blurring the words for a moment. He knew. He had seen their indifference, felt their abandonment. My heart ached for him, for the quiet burden he had carried. "This key," the letter continued, "is for the small safe hidden behind the painting in our bedroom closet. The one you always joked was my secret stash for chocolate. Well, it is a secret, but not for chocolate. It holds something for you, my darling. Something I hope will bring you peace." I clutched the key tighter, a new surge of curiosity battling with the profound sorrow. "My greatest privilege in this life was loving you, Eleanor. Thank you for always believing in me. Even when I doubted myself. Even when others didn't. You were my rock, My anchor. My beautiful compass. More tears came, hot and fast. He truly understood. He truly appreciated. The password to the safe, he wrote, his handwriting steady, is October 15th, 1975. Do you remember, my love? The day we met at the Harvest Festival. You were wearing that beautiful blue dress, the one with the tiny white flowers, and I told you that corny joke about the scarecrow, and you laughed, that wonderful, melodious laugh of yours. It was the moment I knew. The moment I knew you were meant to be mine. A soft, choked sob escaped me. Of course, I remembered. Every detail, the crisp autumn air, the scent of apple cider, the way his eyes had crinkled when he smiled. The blue dress, long since given away, but vivid in my memory. He remembered it all. He remembered us. The letter concluded, I love you, Eleanor. I always have. And wherever I am now, I always will. I buried my face in the letter, clutching it to my chest, my body shaking with silent sobs. His voice, strong and loving, echoed in every single word, a final, beautiful affirmation of a love that had weathered every storm. He was gone, but his love, pure and unwavering, remained. It was a lifeline in the vast ocean of my grief. If you've been gripped by Arthur and Eleanor's story so far, make sure you don't miss what happens next. The secrets Eleanor is about to uncover will change everything. Hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of this incredible journey. You won't believe what Eleanor finds. The house felt impossibly empty, a cavernous space echoing with the silence of Arthur's absence. Every object, every piece of furniture, seemed to hum with his memory. A ghost in every corner. I walked through the familiar rooms, my steps heavy, the reality of my new solitude pressing down on me. The vibrant life we had built together, the laughter, the quiet conversations over morning coffee, all seemed to have evaporated, leaving behind a stark, aching void. I made myself a cup of coffee. The ritual, a small comfort in the disorienting aftermath of grief. The aroma filled the kitchen, but the warmth felt distant. I sat at our kitchen table, the brass key from Arthur's letter lying cold and heavy on the polished wood. Its intricate design seemed to beckon, a promise of hidden truths. After a few sips, fortifying myself against what I knew would be another emotional revelation, I rose and walked towards our bedroom. The closet, Arthur's domain for so long, still held the faint scent of his aftershave and the worn leather of his work boots. My fingers traced the outline of his heavy-duty boots, tucked neatly into a corner. I moved them aside, and there it was, built seamlessly into the wall, covered by a discreet panel. A small, fireproof safe. I had never seen it before, never suspected its existence. Arthur, ever the man of secrets, of quiet preparations. My heart pounded with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity as I entered the password. 101575. The day we met. The day my life truly began. There was a soft, satisfying click, and the heavy door swung open, revealing its contents. Inside, carefully arranged, were several bundles of crisp, new cash, thousands of dollars tucked away. My grandmother's pearl necklace, a treasured heirloom I thought had been lost years ago, lay gleaming against velvet. Beside it, other pieces of jewelry I hadn't seen in ages, items I had forgotten existed, believing them misplaced or gone. A small gasp escaped my lips. He had kept them safe, cherished them, knowing their sentimental value to me. But what truly took my breath away, what stopped my breath entirely, was a worn, leather-bound journal. My name, Eleanor, was embossed on the cover in elegant gold script, and beneath it, in Arthur's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "What they never knew." My hand trembled as I lifted the journal. This was more than just a safe full of valuables. This was his heart, his untold story. I settled onto the bed, the journal heavy in my lap, and opened it to the first page. The entries weren't chronological in the traditional sense, but moments of poignant pain and quiet sacrifice, meticulously recorded. January 3rd, 2013. Michael's birthday. Eleanor baked his favorite chocolate fudge cake, even though she knew he wouldn't be here. We waited by the phone all day. It never rang. I saw her crying quietly in the kitchen later, cleaning up. Pretended I didn't see. My vision blurred. Arthur had seen my pain, had protected me even from my own sorrow, by pretending not to notice. June 15th, 2015. Diana called today, asking for money. $5,000. Said Kevin's business was in trouble. Medical bills. I gave it to her. Later that week, while looking through Michael's Facebook, I saw Diana's vacation photos. Kevin bought a new fishing boat, a big one. They were in Hawaii. Eleanor doesn't know about my Facebook account. She believes Diana's stories. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Arthur had a secret Facebook account, just to keep tabs on them, to see the lives they lived, the truths they hid. He had protected me from that too. From the brutal reality of their deceit. Entry after entry, Arthur had documented every slight, every missed holiday, every unreturned call. It was a silent chronicle of their children's indifference, a ledger of neglect that only he had borne witness to. He wrote about the Thanksgivings Michael missed, the birthdays Diana forgot, the phone calls that never came. But alongside the pain, he also recorded every sacrifice he had made, every small, quiet effort to bridge the ever-widening gap with his children, to protect me from the full brunt of their indifference. November 24th, 2016. Thanksgiving. Michael didn't come again. Too busy with work. Eleanor set a place for him anyway, just in case. She always holds out hope. I told her we had a nice, quiet holiday. Just us. Later, I called Michael to thank him for the flowers that never came. Figured it was easier than telling her the truth. She looked so happy when I said he'd called to apologize. My hand flew to my mouth, a choked sob escaping. He had done that? For years? He had manufactured kindness, created an illusion of filial affection. All to shield me. The cards I'd received, the thoughtful gifts on Mother's Day, the impromptu phone calls I thought came from Michael or Diana. It was all Arthur. He had been buying them, signing their names, delivering the messages, fabricating an image of love and care that simply didn't exist. March 8th, 2019. Mother's Day. Eleanor looked so sad this morning. No card from Diana. Ordered a beautiful bouquet of roses online. Wrote the card myself. Love. Diana and the kids. Placed it on the porch. Then, went to the store, bought that expensive bottle of wine she likes, told her it was from Michael. A last-minute surprise. Her smile was worth it. I closed the journal, pressing it to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Arthur. My Arthur, the man who had spent his last years not trying to win back their respect, but protecting my heart from their carelessness. His selfless love, his silent sacrifices, his unwavering devotion to me, were overwhelming. He had been my shield, my guardian, the steadfast center of my universe. And I had never even known the full extent of his protection. He had carried the burden of their indifference, shielding me from the pain of their neglect, all to preserve my fragile happiness. I kept reading, compelled by the raw honesty pouring from Arthur's elegant script. Each entry was a fresh wound, but also a testament to a love so profound it bordered on the miraculous. My heart, already raw from the earlier revelations, broke further with every carefully chosen word, every date, every heartbreaking detail. April 15th, 2018. Heard through an old contact that Michael's company was in some serious financial trouble. He'd never admitted to us. Saw an article about layoffs, took out $5,000 from our emergency fund, sent it to him as an anonymous money order. Eleanor thinks I used that money to finally fix the leak in the roof, told her it was unexpected expenses that came up. Her face fell. But she understood. Always understood. I remembered that. The leak that had started after a heavy storm, dripping steadily into a bucket in the attic. I'd asked Arthur about getting it fixed, and he'd just sighed, saying, "Something else came up, Eleanor. We'll get to it." I'd fretted, convinced the whole roof would collapse before we could afford repairs. Now, the bitter truth revealed itself. He had delayed the much-needed repair on our home, risking structural damage and our own comfort, to bail out a son who wouldn't even return his calls. Michael, who never acknowledged his father's struggles, was unknowingly living off his father's silent sacrifices. The roof, I now knew, wasn't fixed until months later, using the last of our meager savings. September 3rd, 2018. Diana's oldest, Sarah, started high school this week. Saw pictures on her Instagram. Bright girl, didn't even know she was that old. Wanted to help. Wanted to do something. Took out a loan against my life insurance policy. It hurt to do it. That was for our future. For your security. Sent the money anonymously to her school, marked as a scholarship for academic achievement. Maybe it will help her. Maybe she'll never know. A horrified gasp escaped my lips. His life insurance. The very thing meant to secure my future. To provide for me after he was gone. He had tapped into it, jeopardizing our financial stability. For a grandchild who didn't even know him, whose mother complained about flight costs, and paraded her Hawaiian vacations, while Arthur struggled, the sheer, selfless generosity of it, coupled with the profound neglect from their end, was almost unbearable. He had poured his heart, and what little wealth he had left into their lives, only to be met with utter silence and indifference. October 31st, 2018, Halloween. Eleanor bought extra bags of candy. Set out the big pumpkin light, hoping some of the neighborhood kids would stop by. She waited by the door, pretending to read. I saw the disappointment when the night ended and the candy was untouched. Our own grandchildren are just a few hours away. I wonder if they even know they have grandparents who would give anything just to see them once, even just for a few minutes. I recalled that night, the quiet anticipation in my eyes, the gradual fading of hope as the porch light remained undisturbed. Arthur had held my hand, telling me, "More for us, sweetheart, and less sugar for those little monsters." His words were meant to cheer me, to distract from the ache of unfulfilled expectation. He had always tried to paint a rosy picture, to make our loneliness seem like a choice, a preference for quiet intimacy, rather than the painful reality of abandonment. December 20th, 2019. Michael's son, young Arthur, got accepted to Stanford. Very proud of him, even if he doesn't know us. That's a lot of money. Even with a scholarship. Started selling my old tools, piece by piece. My wrench set. The drill press I bought when we built this house. Each one meant something. But they're worth more if they can help him. Building another college fund. Anonymous, of course. For my namesake. My eyes welled up again. Arthur's tools. His prized possessions. Each tool had a story. A memory of a project. A repair. A moment of satisfaction. I had noticed them disappearing, one by one. "Just decluttering, Eleanor," he'd say with a shrug. "Don't need all that junk anymore." Or, "Lent it to a neighbor." He needed it for a project. I had believed him, never suspecting the depth of his sacrifice, the quiet dismantling of his own history to pave a brighter future for a grandson who would never know the source of his good fortune. He was providing for them from beyond the grave, even before he was truly gone. March 15th, 2020. Pandemic started. Called Michael, just to check in, see if they were all safe. He answered like I was a telemarketer, annoyed, said they were fine. "Don't worry about us, Dad." Hung up quickly. I worry about them, even though they never worry about us. It's a parent's curse, I suppose. His raw vulnerability, the simple, undeniable truth of a parent's unconditional love, regardless of the reciprocation, struck me profoundly. Even as they neglected him, his concern for their well-being remained paramount. Entry after entry, the pattern repeated. A slight from their children, followed by Arthur's silent, anonymous sacrifice to soften their struggles or bolster my spirits. He had systematically documented every anonymous gift, every quiet loan, every unreturned call, building a meticulous record of their indifference and his boundless love. He had carefully curated an illusion for me, weaving a protective tapestry of fabricated care to shield me from the harsh reality of our children's neglect. May 10th, 2020. Mother's Day. It rained all morning. Eleanor was quiet, just sipping her tea, looking out the window. I know what she was thinking. I went online, ordered her a beautiful bouquet of lilies, her favorite, and a card. Signed it, "Thanks for being the best mom in the world. Love, Diana." When she read it, she held the card to her chest and smiled. A real smile. That's all I wanted. Just for her to smile. My hand covered my mouth to stifle a sob. The lilies. I remembered them perfectly. I had been so touched, so moved. Believing my daughter had finally remembered. It had brought me such joy. Such a profound sense of being loved and appreciated. All of it, every single beautiful gesture, had been Arthur. It was too much. The weight of his love, his quiet heroism, pressed down on me, overwhelming me with a mixture of heartbreak and an agonizing, beautiful understanding. The journal lay open on my lap, each page a fresh wave of understanding, a testament to a love so profound it hurt. Arthur's final entries were a mosaic of quiet heroism and crushing loneliness, painting a picture of a man who loved fiercely, unconditionally, even when his love was met with cold indifference. January 8th, 2021, Eleanor's birthday. She always pretends not to mind when the kids forget, so I ordered her that silver locket she admired, said it was from Michael, and a beautiful silk scarf from that boutique downtown. Told her, Diana picked it out specially. She beamed. That's all that matters, her smile. My hand went to the locket, still around my neck. It was true. I had cherished it, believing it came from Michael. The scarf, too, had been a favorite, always draped over my shoulders on chilly evenings. Arthur, my phantom gift giver, always filling the void left by our children. August 12th, 2021. Heard through a neighbor that Diana's middle child, Mark, broke his leg playing soccer. No call to us, of course. Sent a care package with books, games, and some homemade cookies. Signed it simply, "From your grandparents, who love you." Hope he knows. The anonymous package, the simple, heartfelt message. He was trying to reach them, trying to connect, even when they made it impossible. He was a grandfather yearning for contact. A silent provider for a family who barely acknowledged his existence. November 25th, 2021, Thanksgiving. Eleanor cooked a feast for 6 people today, even though it was just us. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, all her favorites. She keeps saying, "Maybe next year." Hope is sometimes all we have left. And a full plate of leftovers. The memory brought a fresh wave of tears. The sprawling table, set with extra plates, the quiet hope in my eyes that slowly faded into resignation. Arthur had always made light of it, focusing on our shared meal, our comfortable silence, but he understood the silent heartbreak. As I absorbed each entry, a chilling realization dawned on me. Arthur wasn't just shielding me from pain, he was systematically documenting their neglect, their ingratitude. Every gift, every loan, every unanswered call. It was all here, meticulously recorded. It was a ledger, not of debt, but of evidence. December 25th, 2021, Christmas. Eleanor spent weeks knitting scarves and baking cookies. I spent $800 we couldn't afford on toys and clothes, packages sent to both Michael's and Diana's families. Not a single acknowledgement, not a call, not a text, nothing. It's like we don't exist. But Eleanor still hums Christmas carols. The depth of their indifference, catalogued so painstakingly by the man who suffered it, was agonizing. He had continued to give, to hope, to sacrifice, even when they offered nothing in return. March 18th, 2022. Michael lost his job. Heard it from a distant relative. Not him. He must be too proud. Sent another anonymous money order. $3,000 this time. Had to borrow against the house, the last of our equity. We'll be all right. He needs it more than we do. My breath hitched. He had borrowed against our home, our sanctuary, the house he built with his own hands, all for a son who was too proud, too consumed by his own world, to ever reach out. The selflessness, the quiet despair of it all, was almost unbearable. The most recent entries were the most heartbreaking, painting a picture of Arthur in his final year, grappling with unspoken fears and profound, quiet love. October 15th, 2022, our anniversary, 46 years. The kids didn't call, didn't send a card. Eleanor was quiet, but she didn't complain. I put on our old dance record, Stardust. We danced in the kitchen, just like we used to. She still laughs when I miss a step. I'm the luckiest man alive. Even if our children don't understand that, she is my world. A fresh torrent of tears streamed down my face. Our kitchen dance, the joy of that moment, the comforting familiarity of his arms around me. He had found happiness in our simple world, in our enduring love, even as his heart must have ached for his absent children. December 31st, 2022, New Year's Eve. Eleanor fell asleep on the couch, watching that old movie she loves. I covered her with her favorite blanket, sat beside her, just watching her sleep. So beautiful, even in her sleep. Love isn't about keeping score. It's just love. And I have so much of it for her. His tenderness, his unwavering devotion, shone through every word. He had loved me with a depth I was only now beginning to fully comprehend. He loved me so much that he had endured their neglect, not just for himself, but for me. The very last entry, dated January 15th, 2023, just 2 weeks before his stroke, sent a cold shiver down my spine. January 15th, 2023. Eleanor doesn't know about the chest pains. Been having them more often lately. Getting worse. Updated the safety deposit box at the bank. All our papers. The will. I hope she'll understand. Understand that every choice I made, every secret I kept, every sacrifice, was about love. She was everything. My everything. He had known. He had sensed. His time was short. Had silently prepared. Not for himself, but for me. He had suffered in silence, protecting me from even his own physical pain. He had gone to the grave carrying the burdens of his children and the secret of his own suffering, all to spare me. The funeral at St. Mary's was a somber affair. The pews, usually overflowing, were sparsely populated. Only 19 people attended, mostly kind neighbors. A few old friends from his maintenance job. And myself. The silence in the church was heavy, punctuated only by the soft sniffles of a few mourners. Then they arrived. Michael and Diana, making their grand entrance, dressed in expensive, somber attire that seemed out of place in our humble community church. They strode down the aisle, their faces carefully composed, a practiced air of grief about them. They sat beside me, but the emotional distance between us was vast, an unbridgeable chasm. During the service, I noticed them, Michael subtly checking his phone beneath the hymnal, Diana whispering to him. Their conversation hushed, but clearly not about Arthur. Probate, I overheard Diana murmur. And about selling the house. It's too big for her anyway. Their words were cold, pragmatic, devoid of genuine sorrow. My heart hardened, a new resolve forming in its place. Arthur had left me with a legacy, not just of love, but of truth, and now, armed with his words, I would use it. After the somber service, as the few attendees slowly began to disperse, a kind, elderly woman named Mrs. Davies approached me. Her eyes were warm with genuine sympathy. Eleanor, she began, her voice raspy. I just wanted to tell you how sorry I am for your loss. Arthur was a good man. A truly good man. She paused, then added softly. Remember that storm last year? The one that ripped a few shingles off my roof? Arthur came over right away, fixed it up good as new. Wouldn't take a dime. Said he was just helping a neighbor. Her words were a gentle echo of Arthur's boundless generosity. A small, unsolicited testament to the man he truly was. I simply nodded, a tight smile on my face. already knowing the depth of his kindness. Moments later, Michael and Diana, their faces composed, their expensive clothes a stark contrast to the modest setting, approached me. There was no real warmth in their eyes, no genuine empathy. Their concern was purely pragmatic. "Mom," Michael began, his voice lowered to an almost conspiratorial whisper. "We need to discuss Dad's affairs." "And the house," Diana nodded, chiming in. "It's just too much for you, Mom. Too big. We think it would be best to sell it. We could find you a lovely senior community, you know, with lots of activities, then we could divide the proceeds fairly." The words were delivered with a chilling matter-of-factness, as if they were discussing an unwanted piece of furniture. Not my home, my sanctuary. The very foundation of my life with Arthur, and fairly. The word itself tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked at them. Truly looked at them. My heart, a complex mix of grief and a burgeoning, righteous anger. "Have either of you," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, "even wondered how I'm doing emotionally? If I'm scared, or lonely, or just heartbroken?" They exchanged a quick, uncomfortable glance. "Of course, Mom," Diana said, her tone a little too sweet. "We're concerned. That's why we think a senior community would be so beneficial. Companionship, professional support." Michael nodded, adding, "There are resources available, Mom. For seniors. We can help you look into them." Their responses were textbook, generic, utterly devoid of the personal connection I craved, the genuine love Arthur had always given them. A cold calm settled over me. This was it. The moment Arthur had unknowingly prepared me for. I took a deep breath. "Where have you been?" I asked, my voice rising slightly, cutting through the sterile air. "For the past 11 years, they blinked, surprised by the directness of my question. Michael frowned. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "I'm talking about your father," I continued, my voice gaining strength, each word a hammer blow of truth. "I'm talking about the man who cashed in part of his retirement fund to give Diana money for medical bills, only to see her post pictures from Hawaii months later. I'm talking about the man who sold his cherished tools, piece by piece, to build a college fund for a grandson who barely knew him. I'm talking about the man who took out loans against this house, our house, and even his life insurance policy, to bail out Michael's failing company and pay for Diana's children's education." Michael's face, usually so composed, went pale. Diana's perfectly applied makeup seemed to crack, revealing a flicker of raw guilt beneath. "What are you talking about?" Michael asked again, his voice weak, barely a whisper. I reached into my purse, my fingers closing around the leather-bound journal. I pulled it out, holding it up for them to see. "Your father," I stated, my voice ringing with a newfound authority, "kept a record." I flipped open to a page. "That $5,000 money order that supposedly saved your company, Michael, the one you thought came from some anonymous client? It came from your father, from our emergency fund." I saw the blood drain from his face. Then I turned to Diana. "And those tuition payments, the medical bills for your children? They weren't covered by Kevin's sudden recovery. They were paid by Arthur, from his life insurance policy, a policy meant to protect me." Diana gasped, a sharp, choked sound. "No, we never asked him to. We didn't know," she stammered, her eyes wide with shock. "No," I retorted, my voice unwavering. "You never asked. You never called. You never visited. You never even wondered if your parents, who had given you everything, might be struggling. You were too busy with your perfect lives, weren't you?" Michael stepped forward, a desperate plea in his eyes. "Mom, we didn't know. We truly didn't know." "Didn't know?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. I opened the journal again, flipping to the entry from Michael's birthday, January 3rd, 2013. I read aloud, my voice clear and strong. "Michael's birthday. Eleanor made his favorite chocolate fudge cake, even though she knew he wouldn't be here. We waited by the phone all day. It never rang. I saw her crying quietly in the kitchen later, cleaning up, pretended I didn't see. I looked up, meeting his gaze. That was your father, Michael. Protecting me. From you. Then I lowered the journal, my gaze sweeping between them. And when Arthur had his stroke, when I called you both, begging you to come, Michael, you dismissed it as not serious enough. Diana, you complained about the cost of a flight. You left him to die alone, in that hospital room, with only me by his side. My voice cracked then, the raw pain finally breaking through. He spent the last 11 years of his life, from the moment he lost his job, trying to prove his worth to you, trying to win back your respect, and all the while, he was doing everything he could to protect my heart from the truth of your neglect. I gestured around the modest church, then back to them. And now you want to talk about fairness? About selling this house? The house your father built with his own hands? To put me in some sterile facility and divide the proceeds? After everything he did for you? After everything you didn't do for him? Michael, visibly shaken, took another step towards me. Mom, please. We can do better now. We can make it right. My eyes hardened. No, Michael. You can't do better now. Your father is dead. Diana finally broke, genuine tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I stated, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Doesn't give your father back the respect he deserved. Sorry doesn't bring back the years you stole from him, the time you denied him. Sorry doesn't fix a broken heart. I tucked the journal back into my purse, a sense of quiet power settling over me. The house, I said, my voice firm and resolute, is not for sale. And neither am I. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving my children standing in stunned silence amidst the lingering scent of funeral flowers. The satisfaction was profound. A bitter, yet sweet victory. Arthur's truth had finally been unveiled. 6 months had passed since Arthur's funeral. 6 months since I'd stood in that church, delivering a truth that had been buried for too long. Now, I stood in the bustling terminal of LAX, the roar of jet engines, a stark contrast to the quiet life I had led. My carry-on bag felt light, but my heart, though still tinged with grief, felt lighter too. I was bound for Ireland, fulfilling a dream Arthur and I had harbored for decades. I remembered the evenings he'd spend hunched over old maps and genealogical charts, tracing his family tree back through generations. He'd discovered a branch rooted deep in the soil of County Cork, a place called Ballyvorney, where his great-great-grandfather, Seamus O'Connell, was born. One day, Eleanor, he'd always say, his eyes shining with a distant longing. One day we'll walk those green hills together. It was an unspoken wish, a promise we'd made to each other, a dream that now, I was determined to make a reality for both of us. In those 6 months, I had heard from my children twice. Michael, with a strained, insincere apology call, laced with carefully chosen words. I had listened for precisely 1 minute, then quietly hung up. There was nothing left to say, nothing he could offer that would mend the years of neglect. The second contact came from Diana's lawyer, a formal letter demanding I turn over financial documents and cooperate with the division of assets, implying I was withholding funds. I simply forwarded the letter to my own attorney, instructing her to send a firm response. Any further attempt to pursue funds from Arthur's estate would be met with full disclosure of Arthur's journal, his meticulous record of their years of taking and his years of giving. The silence that followed was deafening, and I knew I had finally stopped protecting them. On the transatlantic flight, as the plane soared above the clouds, I pressed my hand against the cool window pane. "We're finally doing it, Arthur," I whispered, my voice lost in the hum of the engines. "We're going to Ireland." A single tear traced a path down my cheek, but it was a tear not of sorrow, but of profound, bittersweet love. Ballyvorney, when I finally arrived, was everything Arthur had imagined. Rolling green hills, stone fences, and a quiet charm that felt timeless. In the village graveyard, nestled amongst ancient headstones, I found it. Seamus O'Connell, Arthur's great-great-grandfather. I knelt, tracing the weathered inscription with my fingers, feeling a deep connection to the past, to Arthur's roots. From a small pouch in my pocket, I carefully sprinkled a handful of dirt from our California garden onto the grave. A piece of home, I murmured. A silent bridge connecting their past to our present. A tribute from a man who loved his history and his home. Later, Father Riley, the local priest, a man with kind eyes and a lilting brogue, shared stories of Arthur's ancestors, tales of resilience, hard work, and deep-seated family loyalty. The words resonated deeply within me, a poignant echo of the very quality Arthur had embodied, and his children had so tragically lacked. My journey continued to Galway, where the salty sea air invigorated my spirit. In a small pub, I met Maeve, an elderly widow with eyes that held a lifetime of stories. We talked for hours, sharing tales of lost loves and enduring memories. "Do you have family here, dear?" she asked, her voice soft. I smiled. A genuine, unforced smile. "No," I replied. "My children are very busy." I didn't elaborate, didn't reveal the full, messy truth. I simply let the words hang, a gentle curtain drawn over the pain, choosing to protect my peace rather than expose their failings to a kind stranger. I extended my trip, reveling in the freedom, the beauty, the quiet sense of purpose that had replaced the gnawing emptiness. I wasn't homesick. Arthur was with me, in every breathtaking landscape, every shared story, every memory I was now creating for us both. At the majestic cliffs of Moher, with the wild Atlantic wind whipping around me, I pulled out Arthur's journal. I flipped to a random page, his neat handwriting speaking to me from the past. "I wish I could give Eleanor adventures," I read aloud, my voice carried by the wind, memories that transcend the mundane. "She deserves so much more." I closed the journal, holding it tight against my chest. "You did give me something beautiful, Arthur," I whispered into the vastness of the ocean. 47 years of feeling completely loved. And that, my darling, is the greatest adventure of all. In Dublin, before my flight home, I purchased a beautiful silver Celtic cross, a symbol of enduring faith and connection. I bought a small, engraved stone to place on Arthur's grave, a simple tribute from his beloved. And then, I bought 2 postcards, identical in their depiction of a vibrant Irish landscape. I sat down in a quiet cafe and carefully wrote 2 identical messages. "Ireland is beautiful. Arthur would have loved it here. I'm finally living the dreams we never got to share. Mom." I addressed one to Michael, the other to Diana, and dropped them into a mailbox without expectation, without hope of forgiveness, without an ounce of regret. I was done protecting them from the consequences of their actions. This was for me. Back home, Mrs. Davies was waiting by my door, watering my flowers. She looked up, her face creasing into a smile. "Eleanor, welcome home. You look different." She was right. I felt different. I felt like a woman who had stopped apologizing for existing, for feeling, for loving, for moving on. I spent the next few days in Arthur's memory garden, carefully planting small, hardy Irish flowers I had brought back with me. As I worked, my phone chimed with new voicemails. I saw the familiar numbers: Michael, Diana. Without hesitation, I selected delete all. 3 weeks later, Diana arrived unannounced, her face drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. She stood on my porch, clutching a worn envelope. "Mom," she began, her voice trembling. I want to make it right. I want to pay back the money. All of it." I looked at her, a profound sense of calm washing over me. The rage had subsided, replaced by a quiet understanding, a quiet resolve. "Keep the money, Diana," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "Your father gave it freely. Out of love, he would never want it back." I paused, then continued, meeting her gaze directly. "Stop trying to ease your guilt and start being the person he believed you could be. Be a better mother to your children than you were a daughter to him." And with that, I simply closed the door, leaving her standing alone in the driveway, the echo of my words hanging in the air. Later that evening, I sat in my favorite armchair, Arthur's journal open in my lap. I reread his very last entry. January 15th, 2023. Eleanor doesn't know about the chest pains. I hope she'll understand that every choice I made was about love. She was everything. I finally, truly understood. His gift was not just protection, but the courage to hope, to dream, to love deeply, and to understand that love doesn't require reciprocation to be profound. I closed my eyes, picturing Arthur's face, vibrant and full of life. There would be another trip, I decided. Perhaps Scotland, or Wales. There were so many delayed dreams, so many adventures waiting. I fell asleep peacefully. Arthur's journal clutched to my chest, knowing that his legacy had taught me the courage to live fully, to love deeply, and to dream boldly, even alone.